Without further ado, let's dive into our first session, Outcomes of COP28. And joining us to provide the introduction for this panel is Professor Mark Maslin, the Pro-Vice Provost for Climate Crisis at UCL.
It turns out I'm also the all-powerful being because I found the clicker. Okay, so I am now in complete control of everything. So I have a very wonderful job, which is just to try and introduce you to the COP meetings, which everybody talks about, but what are they? We've had 28 of them. You heard Al Gore say that we've had them. Now, the interesting thing is they're really complicated. So in the middle, you have the negotiations. This is where the 198 countries get together and they try to actually get treaties on many different things. Sometimes you only hear the top line. But that's just a very small part. We have underneath that the blue zone. This is the zone where lots of pavilions for the countries, the World Bank, there's an indigenous people's pavilion, there's young people's pavilion, and this is where lots of negotiation and pressure goes on to countries, but also to the actual negotiators. And that's a huge part of the deal. And then outside that, you have business. So business knows that everybody they want to do business with will be there, so they turn up as well. And as we saw in Glasgow, civil society. Huge protests on every single subject. Huge sort of like demonstrations on both the Friday with Fridays for Future and then on the Saturday when it felt like everybody in Glasgow went on the streets. So, Glasgow. Okay, we actually achieved something at Glasgow. What did we achieve? Well, the first thing, it was 2021. It was delayed by a year because of COVID. And what was interesting is that allowed the Italian and UK governments to have an extra year of negotiation because international politics is hard and actually takes a lot of time. And it was about ratcheting up. We had the Paris Agreement that says we will limit climate change to 2 degrees with an aspirational target of 1.5 degrees. And then Glasgow was the let's see what people are going to pledge and see how we can actually improve that. So what happened? So we had strong targets of 1.5 degrees. We had the term phasing down of coal and removal of inefficient fossil fuel subsidies. Now that may not sound very much, but that is the first time in a climate agreement that fossil fuels were ever mentioned. 2021, okay? Sounds amazing. Article 6, the rule book on carbon accounting between countries and how you measure it was finally agreed. But what did we fail? We failed still to give the 100 billion to the least developed countries to move away from fossil fuels. We agreed that in 2009, and guess what? Still we haven't given it. And I have to say, that's sort of loose change for the developed world. We did not create the loss and damage facility, and I have to say, one of the scenes that will stick with me was Alex Sharma, who was the president of COP, actually having tears in his eyes because he didn't achieve this. And the actual pledges, great, but guess what? They're nowhere near the 1.5. We're still at 2.4 to 2.8 degrees warming, but it moved forward. Egypt. Okay, so in Egypt, a year later, we were hoping it was going to ratchet up. This was the African COP. It was going to be about adaptation, and perhaps I should move on. So really, all we did for 2 weeks was keep the Glasgow Climate Pact alive. There was so much effort to try and water it down. But on the Sunday, the loss and damage facility was finally agreed to be set up, which I thought we'd done in Paris in 2015. But it turns out this was the real agreement that we were going to set it up. And guess what? We still hadn't got any further with these. So we moved to Dubai. And as you can see, this is a dear friend, Simon, who will be on the panel lately, and next. And we have this weird thing, which is we have a president of COP who's also the CEO of the National Oil and Gas Company. We're in the heart of the actual sort of like oil and gas region in the Middle East. But what came out of it? Strong statement on 1.5 degrees, despite the fact in the last 12 months we have actually gone over 1.5. But, you know, let's leave that to one side. And the statement, transition away from fossil fuels in energy systems in a just, orderly, and equitable manner to achieve net zero by 2050 in keeping with the science. You can see that, as Al Gore said, there's a few loopholes in there, but, you know, again, it is announcing the end of fossil fuels, and the panel will discuss what does it actually mean. Global stocktake, which was really important, showed that we're nowhere near keeping the climate to 1.5. Loss and damage was agreed. The World Bank will administer it, but I love this. They will charge 24%. So $1 in $4 that countries gift to this fund will be taken by the World Bank to make sure that it all works. And we still failed with the 100 billion. There's no new pledges, and we have not really agreed about the loss and damage facility, how will it operate, and who will be able to claim. So, I will leave you with this, okay? So, this was Joel Pett's wonderful cartoon in US Today just before the Copenhagen conference in 2009, which of course had huge amounts of hope and crashed awfully. And again, we could have energy independence, preserve the rainforest, sustainability, green jobs, livable cities, renewables, clean water, clean air, healthy children, and there's always someone on the back, but not at this meeting, saying, what if it's a big hoax and we've actually created a better world for nothing? And on that note, guess where we're going next? Azerbaijan. And by the way, unlike Dubai, who actually played the game, yeah, there were no women in the 28 organizing committee. And guess what? The ex-oil chief for the country is the chairman yet again. I'll leave you with that, and the panelists will examine this and give you a lot more insights.